All right, welcome back everyone for the latest edition of Green Builder Media's Impact Series, Game Changers in Sustainability. It's also National Food Day, but before all of you out west head to lunch, we have Bart Houlahan, co-founder of B-Lab, a nonprofit organization dedicated to using the power of business to solve social and environmental problems. Today's webinar would not be possible without the support of our generous sponsors. And those sponsors are BASF. BASF is a leader in the construction industry. With more than 600 products, serving 75 construction product categories, BASF offers the broadest portfolio of products used directly on construction sites or integrated into other products to improve the performance of construction projects. BASF is also a global leader in sustainability and corporate social responsibility, committed to constant improvements in safety, protection of health, and environmental conservation. Bio-based insulation. Bio-based insulation spray polyurethane products help to lessen the environmental impact of residential and commercial structures by sealing and insulating in one step. Bio-based insulation integrates rapidly renewable ingredients as replacement for a portion of the petroleum in many of their insulation products without hindering performance and has replaced chemical blowing agents with water. DuPont. DuPont puts science to work by creating sustainable solutions essential to a better, safer, healthier life for people everywhere. DuPont is focused on dynamic science that generates real-world solutions. That's why DuPont is at the forefront of building science with brands you depend on, like Tyvek, Sentry Glass, Corian Solid Surfaces, Zodiac Quartz Surfaces, and Kevlar. Green Builder Coalition. The Green Builder Coalition amplifies the voice of green builders and professionals to drive advocacy and education for more sustainable building practices. For more information, log on to greenbuildercoalition.org. And Uponor. Uponor is a worldwide supplier of radiant heating and cooling, plumbing, and fire sprinkler systems that provide energy and water efficiency to homes and businesses around the globe. To learn more, please visit www.uponor-usa.com. I'm Mike Collignan, Executive Director of the Green Builder Coalition, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. I hope that during the course of today's presentation, you'll submit questions for our guest. And to do so, simply use the small box at the bottom of the Q&A. I'll review those questions and pose them to Bart during the Q&A time set aside near the end of the webcast. And now to introduce today's speaker. Bart Houlahan co-founded B-Lab in 2006. B-Lab is a nonprofit organization dedicated to using the power of business to solve social and environmental problems. B-Lab has three interrelated initiatives. One, Certified B Corporations, which is a corporate certification for sustainable businesses and social enterprises that meet higher standards of social and environmental performance and legal accountability. Two, the Gears Ratings and Analytics, a ratings platform that drives capital to impact investments by assessing the social and environmental performance of both companies and funds. And three, Benefit Corporations, a new, legally recognized corporate form that changes corporate fiduciary duty, permitting companies to simultaneously create shareholder value and social value. And prior to B-Lab, Bart was president of And1, which is a basketball footwear and apparel company. And before And1, he was an investment banker. Now, Bart is currently a Henry Crown Fellow of the Aspen Institute and an advisory board member of the Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship. He's a graduate of Stanford University, and Bart now resides in Devon, Pennsylvania with his family. Today's moderator is the widely recognized Ron Jones, president of Green Builder Media and board chairman and co-founder of the Green Builder Coalition. Ron, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Mike. This is really exciting for everyone. Let's see, on the East Coast it's afternoon, so good afternoon, Bart. How are you?
I'm well, Ron. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure. I'm really looking forward to learning more about all the activities of your organization and getting a better understanding about what for-benefit corporations are. Corporations aren't people, I understand, but they certainly have a huge impact on people. So
You know,
why
they
don't you tell us what you're about and enlighten us about the B Corp?
Sure. Happy to. And again, thank you for having me, and for all of those who are listening in. I appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Excited to share our story. Uh, B Lab, the nonprofit that I co-founded in 2006, is a pretty simple nonprofit, and that we have a singular mission, and that's trying to figure out how to harness the power of business to solve some of our greatest challenges, whether they be social or environmental. And we really focus, Ron, on the entrepreneur. We believe in the power of entrepreneurship, and that if harnessed appropriately, it can be an incredible force for good. And as a result, we really want to serve the entrepreneur and make it easy for those organizations to scale, to raise capital, to have a liquidity event, and to hold on to mission. We do that through three different interrelated initiatives. The first was our first initiative back in 2007 we launched, and that's a corporate certification called Certified B Corporations. And it's intended to shine a light on the gold standard in the industry, those companies that are truly both making money and making a difference. And by shining a light on them through a corporate certification, we hope it's easier for investors and consumers to find them. Currently, we have about 650 certified B corporations. They're across North America, probably around 550 of them are here in North America. The other 75 or so are sprinkled across the globe. They hail from 60 different industries, and they range from sole proprietors up to billion-dollar companies and everything in between. That's our first initiative, shining a light on those organizations. We then ask around those companies to work with us to actually advocate for a new legally recognized corporate form, something called a benefit to corporation. Now, this is like a C corporation or an S corporation or an LLC. It is a for-profit vehicle, but it allows a company to simultaneously create both shareholder value and social value and not end up getting sued for not maximizing shareholder value. And so that new corporate form has now passed, I think, in 12 states. We just passed Pennsylvania, I think Friday of last week we passed Pennsylvania.
Congratulations.
And we got, thank you. We got about another 16 on the docket for 2013, and it turns out that corporate law is governed state by state, so obviously the ambition there is to cover all 50 states in the next several years. The last piece of the pie for us is driving capital to the entrepreneur. We all know that capital really is the lifeblood of business, and that we have to move money to these organizations that are using their business to alleviate poverty or rebuild community or restore the environment or simply create a great place to work. We do that through something called GEARS Ratings and Analytics. That is, GEARS stands for the Global Impact Investing Rating System. It's essentially, I'm sure, Ron, you have some familiarity with Morningstar or Moody's or S&P. But instead of rating companies on their financial performance, it rates them on their social and environmental performance. And those three kind of hang together, all trying to serve the entrepreneur and allowing those change agents, the entrepreneurs, as I said, to scale, raise capital, and eventually have a liquidity event and hold on to the mission all the while.
Now, I know that when we were having a discussion to prepare, I had asked you to help me understand a little bit about how this affects the so-called fiduciary responsibility of someone who's on the board of a corporation, and I found your response really enlightening. I wonder if you would mind talking a little bit about that.
Absolutely, happy to. So, in the United States, corporations have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize shareholder value. And the truth is, Ron, in a day-to-day basis, organizations have a fair degree of flexibility. There's something called the business judgment rule that essentially allows directors and executives to operate their business in their best judgment. And all they got to essentially prove is that sometime in the future, any decision they make might accrete value to their shareholders. So you can be charitable, you can be environmentally focused, you can be a great employer, you can be engaged in your community, all on your judgment that at some juncture it's going to be meaningful for your shareholders.
And so that allows the board member to take the long range perspective then.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
You do have, in current corporate law, a fair degree of flexibility just on a day-to-day basis. The place where this really comes into play, however, is at that moment when you as the entrepreneur are ready to move on. Either you're selling your business or you're retiring, and there needs to be a succession plan put in place. And when you started your company, the entrepreneurs that we work with, Ron, really started it with a dual purpose. They wanted to obviously make some money for themselves and their shareholders, but they also wanted to do some good. And it might have been environmentally focused or socially focused or even focused on their workers. And their concern is at that moment of liquidity, at that moment of sale, you actually, under the law, have a heightened fiduciary duty, and that you only, at that juncture, can consider one stakeholder, and that's your shareholder. You have to maximize shareholder value. So at the moment when it matters most, when you're trying to preserve the legacy of your business, you are forced to sell the company to the highest bidder. And for that reason, we're trying to provide a solution for those companies that want to run their business differently, right? In a way that as I said, makes money and makes a difference. Uses capitalism to create change. And for those organizations who want to opt in to some of our initiatives, we give them a legal platform that allows them to essentially hold on to mission as they're selling the company.
And it seems that would also provide a greater transparency then for the potential investor, for the person who is looking for companies that they might want to invest in. This helps to take some of the guesswork out of that.
That's exactly right, Ron. And interestingly, we have people showing up to with an interest in our certification really around two key moments in their business. One, when they're out ready to raise some capital, and they want to make sure that the investors that they bring in are mission aligned, that they share their vision for the business. And by incorporating, our certification or our new corporate form, they're making sure that they're bringing in those investors who also share their long-term mission. We also get people showing up at that moment of liquidity when they're about to put their company on the block, and they want to make certain that they can hold on to mission even after they've sold the company.
So how does the entrepreneur or the interested party go about exploring this opportunity then?
A great question. So I want to pause and make sure I differentiate between something that's confusing in general, and we recognize that it's confusing, and that we have a certification, and that's called Certified B Corporations, and then we have a new corporate form that's called a benefit corporation. Those two initiatives on the left-hand side of the screen there. The certification is administered by our nonprofit. The easiest way to think of it is it's kind of like LEAD, but for business. It looks at the whole company. It tries to evaluate everything that you do, your impact on all your stakers, how you impact your workers, the environment, the community, and your governance practices. It is a marketing vehicle you can use to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. Benefit corporation is actually administered by the state. We now, as I said, have passed that in 12 states, and if you want to become a benefit corporation, you never need to work with our nonprofit. You can go to your Secretary of State in one of those 12 states and incorporate or even convert into a benefit corporation. So those are two different things. In terms of the best entry place for folks to start to learn more about what we're doing here, is to be certified, you actually have to take and pass an online assessment. It's called the B Impact Rating System. And I actually encourage all of the audience to go do this because it's free and it's transparent and it's confidential. It's essentially, Ron, an online assessment that tries to evaluate your impact on all your stakeholders and do a quick take on where you are on this journey towards creating social and environmental impact. And the truth is, people run the gamut in this field. They're either just beginning to understand what it means to be sustainable and just starting down this path, and there's others that are experts. And either or, we have found that people really find that the impact rating system is a very educational tool that they can use to help them along the journey. It is probably around 120 to 200 questions, depending upon what industry you're in, how big you are, and where you're located. It takes between 60 to 90 minutes to go through. As I said, it's totally free and confidential. And it acts kind of like a roadmap or a guideline for you to learn about how you can better impact workers, community, and environment. If you want to be certified, you got to score at least an 80 out of 200 points on the assessment. But again, I just encourage people to go on and check it out. We've actually had around 8,000 companies go on confidentially and just use it as an internal management tool to begin this path. As a nonprofit, I celebrate that. I think it's a great thing that 7,400 companies across the globe have been using this tool just as a free resource to try to improve their impact.
That's very commendable, and I can see the value of being able to go in and if you will, take your own temperature before you try to make an appointment with the doctor.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And so you have I'm seeing here that you have about a 40% requirement in terms of the point validation. So you've got 80 out of 200 listed here. That seems like a not too aggressive sort of standard. Tell me about that.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And it's the natural reaction from everybody when they see the scoring system, 80 out of 200. How can this be that rigorous? How can it be that difficult? The truth is, because it's comprehensive in its approach and that it's looking at everything you do, it's quite rigorous. The average score for our 650 certified B corporations is about 105, so it's a little over 50%. It's very hard to do all things well. And you might walk in with a deep green practice in your business, but might realize as you're taking the assessment that you have some ways to go in your worker practices and the engagement of your workforce, that there are a variety of community endeavors that you really haven't explored, whether it be how diverse your workforce is, or whether you're hiring low-income people or residing in a low-income area, or whether you are charitably minded or have a direct service program. There's just a plethora of ways that you can actually really create a profound effect with your business. And it is, I think our high score, to put it in context, Ron, I think our high score is about 150. I don't think anybody's gotten more than a 75% score on this assessment. It's really pretty darn challenging. And again, I recommend it to everybody just as an entry point to see where you stand. You can benchmark yourself really easily against others in the community.
Yeah, and not designed to be a pass-fail per se, but as a starting point so that the interested party can avail themselves of really learning the things that they need to be doing and identifying where their weaknesses are.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we often get people around who show up who really have an interest in the certification, but on their first time through, they scored a 65 or a 72 or even in the 50s. And they ask us to work with them to essentially create a multi-month plan to get them over the 80 bar. And we're very happy to do so completely free. That consulting we do happily for any organization who wants to try to join the community. And we've had people, frankly, work for as long as 24 months to put the practices in place and show the results to get to that 80 bar. We also probably have about a couple dozen sustainability consultants in the community if you wanted to work directly with a professional who could visit you and work with you to get you over the hurdle.
So you do have that resource available then?
We do. In general, most people, frankly, just work with us because we're free, and we're happy to do that. But I do recognize some organizations also want to have, somebody who's going to be working with them on a monthly basis and checking in on them and setting a very clear, easy path for them to work over a period of time to get over the hurdle.
Now, I don't want to get ahead of you, but I want to ask now, is there then a fee structure for certification?
There is. There is. We try to make the fee structure, frankly, modest, but still real. And what I mean by that is, we're a nonprofit. We're principally supported through philanthropy. The certification fees do not cover the overhead of our organization, and frankly only covers about 25% of the overhead of B-Lab. That being said, it's a real check that we ask people to write to show their commitment to the community. It ranges from $500 for a company in revenue size from 0 to $2 million. And then you can imagine, Ron, it steps up all the way up to $25,000 for any business over $100 million in revenue. So Patagonia and Cabot Creamery and as of, frankly, yesterday, Ben and Jerry's, pay us that $25,000 a year fee. And then it steps all the way down to $500 for a smaller organization, 0 to $2 million in revenues.
So it's an annual fee, so that you would need to renew. Um, um, what about required recertification? Is that annual, or is that on a different sequence?
A great question. It is actually every 2 years. So when you get certified, you're certified for a 2-year time frame. At the end of those 2 years, you have to come in and get recertified, and it frankly corresponds with a launch of a new version of the B Impact Rating System. So the Impact Rating System is independently governed, it's totally transparent, and it is dynamic in that it actually iterates. As soon as we launch one version, we begin work on the next, and we're moving towards a version 4.0 to be launched in July of 2013. So when you come back to recertify, you're going to recertify on the new version of the assessment. Traditionally, Ron, we've seen that the bar just gets a little harder to reach with each recertification. It's not so much that we're trying to raise the bar, and folks, we all get better in understanding what sustainability is and how to ask these questions. I often joke, but it's dead serious, that the only thing I know about our impact rating system is that it is wrong and it needs to be improved. But, perfection is the enemy of the good, and our intent here is to continuously improve. And therefore, we think we have a pretty good system. It was named the #1 system by the Sierra Club last year, and it will continue to improve with each iteration.
Well, sustainability is not a static condition, and I think that it's important, and I think that we all support the fact that if we're not learning and we're not growing, we're standing still. So I commend the fact that you're constantly trying to improve the outcome.
Thank you. It's a recognition of the humility that we just don't have it right, and we got to continue to improve it. And to your point, that frankly sustainability remains a nascent field, and we're all learning more every day about how to improve our impact and become more sustainable, and we're trying to reflect that in the assessment.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the sort of the particulars of this thing in terms of, let's say that you have an existing corporation, either a C Corp, an S Corp, or an LLC. How difficult typically is it to, I guess it's going to be all across the board, but take me through a typical scenario if there is such a thing.
Sure. And I'm going to answer that in 2 parts, Ron. I'm going to first focus on the certification, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about incorporating as that new corporate form. Okay, and from the perspective of the certification, we certify any for-profit business, LLC, S, C corporation, as long as they've met the bar of hitting that 80 out of 200. We also ask those companies, Ron, to rewrite their corporate governing documents to include consideration of the interest of stakeholders. We'll give you the paragraph. It's a paragraph long that you're literally going to insert into your articles of incorporation if you're a corporation, into your membership agreement if you're an LLC, into your partnership agreement if you're a partnership. It requires to do so, a board vote and a shareholder vote to get that done, or a member vote or a partner vote. That is the highest barrier to entry. Lots of people score over the 80 out of 200, and then when they come around to actually doing the second requirement of becoming a certified B Corporation, rewriting their corporate governing documents, they find it quite challenging. And the reason it is so difficult, and it's quite intentional, is we're trying to build these companies to last, Ron. We're trying to create a way where the performance that's being exemplified by the impact rating system can be maintained over time because it's embedded in the DNA of the business. So we
Right.
think if you put the two together, right, the performance characteristics from the impact rating system coupled with the rewriting of your corporate governing documents, you have a pretty rigorous certification. So that's how you get certified. We'll certify anybody in all 50 states. It doesn't matter whether, as long as you're a for-profit entity, we'll show you how to include this language and recognize going in that this is a CEO decision that requires a board vote and requires a shareholder vote.
And I think that's an important point that you just made. This is for-profit corporations, not for nonprofits or NGOs or other types of organizations. This is for-profit entities.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Both the certification and the new corporate form is about for-profits. And I'll tell you the reason why is that, the core philosophy of the nonprofit B Lab is that we need to get business more engaged in solving these social and environmental problems. That business represents 77% of U.S. GDP. It is where the action is. Government and nonprofits, God bless them, don't have the ability to act with either the speed nor scale to address all these problems. And we've got to get business more involved. So our effort here is entirely focused on for-profit entrepreneurs and to give them the tools, whether it's shining a light or changing the rules or driving capital to them so that they too can participate in addressing these great challenges.
Well, before you move to part two, let me ask this question. Is the challenge of rewriting the docs and sort of massaging this new entity, is that the biggest hurdle that a company has to clear, or I'm expecting that it might also include the fact that there's a resistance to change, and there's a concern that this may alienate certain stakeholders or investors and so forth?
Yeah, a great question. So in general, the people who are showing up, right, this is all opt-in, so the people who show up to be certified have an interest already in this. But you are exactly right, Ron, that often where I find myself spending a lot of my time is talking to boards of directors and talking to investors about this legal change, about this insertion in the articles, because when they invested in the company, they might have invested, well, at that time, they invested in a business that didn't have this paragraph inserted in the articles. They want to better understand the effect. And the good news is that we have never seen an investor back away from an opportunity because of this legal change. We have invested in our certified B corporations. Every major Sand Hill Road venture capital firm that you can imagine, whether it be Kleiner Perkins or Sequoia or U.S. Ventures, they're all in one way or another in one of our certified B corporations. What's exciting, Ron, is that by becoming a certified B corporation, you actually are opening the door to a different set of investors. There's a set of investors that are termed impact investors, and they're looking in their portfolios to both make money and also find some sort of social or environmental return in their investments. And by investing in one of our certified B corporations or a benefit corporation, they actually know that the mission that they're investing in is going to last. And therefore they care desperately about the opportunity to help scale a great idea that's going to make them some money and simultaneously create some impact. So we don't see it as a prohibitive hurdle, but it does take absolutely some conversation with a board or a set of investors who are unfamiliar with this concept.
Do you find it to be an insurmountable challenge for some board members, and they just simply aren't willing to take on the task, or are most people willing to embrace it?
In general, we have not found it to be insurmountable anywhere. It does take some time, though. I'll be honest, Ron, that we've had companies that have been in the pipeline for 5 years before they certified. And often that is kicking the tires and making sure that our organization has real momentum and that there's a real community that they're joining and that they want to understand who their neighbors are going to be as a certified B corporation. And secondly, they need to do some work with their board members or their investors so that they better understand that this is not going to inhibit incremental rounds of capital, and it in fact could be accretive, frankly, in a sale. And as a result, it takes some education and often some time to get people over the hurdle. But I can't remember, Ron, a circumstance where somebody has said, the CEO's in, we've passed the impact rating system, we understand the change, and I just can't get it through my board of directors. Hasn't happened to date that I know of.
You mentioned impact investors. Can you tell us a little bit more about that group?
Sure. Believe it or not, first importantly, I should be transparent that it is a very small portion of the capital markets. It represents today somewhere between $50 billion and $100 billion of assets under management. And if you look at the aggregate capital markets, that's a drop in the ocean. It's just not that much capital. But it is the fastest growing segment of the capital markets, and it's anticipated to be about a $500 billion market within 5 years. These are investors who are trying to invest in vehicles that are essentially going to get them some return, and some want full market rates, and others are willing to take a modest discount to market rate in exchange for creating real social or environmental impact. And they're differentiated, Ron, from something you might be familiar with, which is called kind of social responsible investing, SRI. That's been around for a long time, SRI investing, and it's a wonderful thing. The differentiation, though, is SRI has really been about do no harm, using a negative screen to make sure if I make investments in a company or a fund that I'm not going to make the world a worse place in the process, either through environmental degradation or human rights issues. What impact investing is about is making money and also moving the needle into the positive territory, not about doing no harm, but actually restoring the environment or alleviating poverty or rebuilding communities or addressing the disparity of wealth in society. Those are the objectives that you find in impact investors. And there's a lot of buzz right now in the impact investing world. There's, whether it be high net worth individuals or financial institutions or foundations, more of those organizations and people are driving more of their portfolio dollars to impact investing. It's an exciting arena, but still relatively small.
And are they global or are they concentrated in certain parts of the world?
Hey, great question. If we look at the folks who have gotten one of our ratings, the Gears Ratings and Analytics that I mentioned at the beginning, we're about split evenly between the U.S. It represents about 50% of the companies that have been rated. We've got about 450 companies in the process of getting rated. Half are in the U.S. The other half are more in emerging markets, South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and so you see both. You really see both showing up.
Interesting. Well, shifting back to the registration piece, which is of course managed by the state.
That's right.
What are the specific requirements for a benefit corporation, and are these consistent from state to state?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I don't know if we really knew what we were biting off when we started down this road of trying to pass legislation in all 50 states to create a new corporate form and the quirks of corporate law within each state. The good news is that a benefit corporation looks pretty damn similar across all 12 states. We have model legislation, which typically a legislator in a state will use as the beginning point and then adopt it or adapt it to some degree for the particulars of that particular jurisdiction. So there are some modest changes, but in general, all benefit corporations meet, 3 specific requirements. It's about higher standards of purpose, accountability, and transparency. Let's kind of talk for a second about each of those.
Yes, please.
On the purpose side, Ron, we are essentially rewriting the best interest clause of the company to include a legal requirement for a benefit corporation to create what we call general public benefit. And that's specifically defined as a material positive impact on society and the environment as evidenced by a third-party rating system. So the idea is that we've added to the purpose of the business to include a positive impact on society and the environment. The second element, the accountability piece.
But let me ask that. Now that sounds pretty broad, but I guess that means that there's a good deal of flexibility within that requirement.
Yeah, and so that the first question we get is, well, what the hell does that mean, right? A positive material impact on society and the environment taken as a whole. That's why that last clause is the most important clause in there, as measured by a third-party assessment. You need to use, and we go on to define the third-party assessments that can be used to do this, and what is reasonable as a third-party assessment. And we talk about comprehensive, independently governed, transparent, and credible. And there's a variety of assessments that you could use to do this. It could be our free assessment online. You're welcome to use that to assess yourselves, or you could use the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. You could use a variety of industry standards in a particular industry. The only thing that's important, Ron, is that it has to be comprehensive. Because this is about a corporate form, it can't just be about your product. It has to be about everything you do. And there's at least a dozen, different assessment tools you could use out there to assess yourself. But it is not because you declare yourself as creating a material positive impact on society and the environment. It's as evidenced by, as measured by, as assessed by a third-party standard that's credible, independent, rigorous, and transparent.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure. The second element is around the accountability piece, and written into your corporate governing documents as a benefit corporation is a requirement for you to consider the impact of your decisions on the community, the environment, and your workers. It doesn't require any sort of particularly balance amongst those different stakeholders. It just says you got to consider them. And you got to make sure as you talk about the ways that you're operating your business that you're being cognizant of the impact of those decisions on your stakeholders. And the reason why we talk about this around accountability is at the end of the day, the people who can hold you accountable to those two first elements are your shareholders. Essentially, you've told your shareholders as a benefit corporation that you have a different mission. You're going to both make money and make a difference. You're going to have a material positive impact on society and the environment, and you're going to consider your stakeholders as you make decisions as an executive team and a board of directors. And the shareholders are the ones who are able to hold you accountable. They have essentially an expanded set of rights, right? Currently, they can sue you if you're not maximizing shareholder value. This also gives them the opportunity, if they think that you are not living up to your legal requirements as a benefit corporation, they can also bring what's called, a benefit litigation, a benefit proceeding to say you're not really considering the impact of your decisions on the environment, or you really haven't had a material positive impact. And the important thing to add about that, there's two really important things to take away about this accountability piece. The first is we've specifically also written in, Ron, that you can't sue for monetary damages. We're not trying to create a new vehicle for attorneys to make money off of corporations.
So this is not just another blood trail in the water, then?
Not at all. Not at all. This is intended for a shareholder to say, hey, I bought into a type of company that I believe was going to really have an impact on the world, and you guys have completely ignored that, and therefore I'm going to bring a proceeding that's going to essentially force some sort of performance, whether it's going to be improving your environmental standards or whether it's going to be stopping you from dumping water in the river, whatever it might be. The actual proceeding is about seeking injunctive relief from the courts to make sure you stop doing something and start improving your social and environmental impact.
This is
The
about
second,
walking the talk.
that's right. That's exactly right. And importantly also, the second piece is that this does not create what's called a third-party right of action. And the reason why that really matters is the first concern, totally understandable concern from executives and the board is, hey, listen, does this mean some nonprofit can show up and sue me for not being green enough? And the answer there is absolutely not. The only accountability is between you and your shareholders, and your shareholders can hold you accountable to these two requirements.
Yeah, that would be the absolute kiss of death to the concept, wouldn't it?
We get no adoption, right? At the end of the day, there'd be no adoption whatsoever. We've had, just in the last year, about 150 or so companies elect to be benefit corporations. So the adoption is actually right now accelerating. We're pretty excited about it. The third piece I definitely want to mention, though, in terms of this new corporate form, is the only way the shareholders are going to know if you've actually met those first two obligations is if you're transparent about it. So we require transparency through something called a benefit report. Every year you got to report whether you've met Objective A and Objective B through a benefit report that you file with the Secretary of State and you put up on your website, and it allows your shareholders, and you send to your shareholders, and allows them to evaluate whether indeed you've created that material positive impact and you've considered effects of your decisions on stakeholders.
So in effect, it's taking the spreadsheet and opening it up so that we're seeing not only the financial results, but the sustainability results of your activity.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we do obviously put in there that the benefit report doesn't need to include what's considered proprietary, sensitive, competitive information, but it does try to shine a light on your sustainability practices to demonstrate to your shareholders that you indeed are taking quite seriously your requirements, your legal requirements, to create that positive impact and consider stakeholders.
So let me ask you this, because I know that we all have limited bandwidth. There's only so many. I don't, in our organization, we recognize there are only 30 hours in a day and 9 days in a week, so we can only do so much. How much additional burden does this put on a company, particularly on a small firm that has limited bandwidth?
It's a great question. And the truth is we believe the certification's rigorous. It's intended to be. We're trying to set out a gold standard. And if we back all the way up, Ron, the objective here is by creating a gold standard that we're going to move all business towards a more sustainable future, that we're working to redefine success for business, and that people are going to compete not to be just, best in the world, but best for the world. And we do that by really highlighting those gold standard organizations. Now, that being said, we have organizations that run from sole proprietors up to those with, we're soon going to have a certified B Corporation with 65,000 employees and everything in between. So there are definitely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-person companies that choose to be certified, choose to be benefit corporations, and the incremental requirements are modest because they're already running their company this way, right? They're already running their business in a way that's making a real impact on society and the environment. And we are just a platform. We're an opportunity. We're a way for them to demonstrate that there's a different way to do business and be part of a broader community that brings together, the green building movement, the organic movement, the fair trade movement, the social enterprise movement, the local movement. All of those are manifestations of the same intent, Ron. All those companies are trying to use business to some way create change. And all we serve is as a platform uniting those different efforts under a common brand that makes it easy for consumers to say, I got it. That's a good company. That's a good company.
Well, let me ask one additional question, and then I want to alert Mike that Mike may have questions as well, either his own or from people who are in attendance today. But my question is, how are you penetrating the business world out there? How do people know about your enterprise and your efforts?
Great question. And we as you know, Ron, we're a small NGO, right? We're a 30-person, $5 million operating budget nonprofit. And coming from the athletic footwear and apparel industry, I know that we're not going to, break consumer consciousness through huge marketing campaigns. We just don't and won't ever have that capital. So we do have a robust marketing effort to try to make sure that this community is growing in recognition and getting the attention it deserves. And it's really three-part, and I'll go through it really rapidly. The first is we obviously do our own marketing. We get a fair amount of free media donated to us as a nonprofit. About $1 million of free media a year is donated to us, and in that, whether it be web or print or outdoor or conference, the idea with that media is to essentially tell the same story about our community over and over and over again and control content and make sure that we're hitting people with the same message. And that is a very simple message. We talk about better companies make better products and B corporations are better companies. That is the tagline to our campaign. It's been running now for 18 months. It'll run probably for another 18 months. And in the process, we can drop in, as you can imagine, Ron, into that campaign dozens upon dozens of certified B corporations who need a light shined on them. So that's the first vehicle, is our own marketing dollars and that free media that we are receiving from our great partners. The second piece is we truly get more press than we deserve. We have now collectively about a $3 billion marketplace of certified B corporations. But I think we've had now this year over 600 articles or media stories written on the community. And it runs the gamut, Ron, from Fortune, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Financial Times, Esquire, and then down to local media. We've also had some fair exposure on TV, whether it be an 8-minute piece on CBS Evening News or on CNN. We get a lot of press, and it's obviously a strategy here. And the idea is that we all know we live in a hero culture. And we have the great privilege of telling 650 hero stories. And I can cut that story any way you want to hear it, right? I can tell it by impact area. I can tell it by geography. I can tell it by industry. And as a result, we end up being kind of a one-stop shop for reporters who want to tell the story of the new economy. They can come to us, say, hey, I'm writing a story about women-owned green building organizations. We can say, great, let's look through our community. I bet you we have some that we can point you to. And we do that every day of the week. So that press has been just a wonderful opportunity to tell the story of this community and shine a light on them. The last piece, Ron, you can already guess, and it's around the co-branding, right? This is a certification. Certified B Corporation mark is something that people use on their packaging, on their business card, on their email signature, on their storefront. And because we span 60 industries, we can tell this story and impact the consumer in pretty much every aspect of their life. You might see it on your coffee bag in the morning. You might then go on and check out your 401k plan and see it on the upper right-hand corner of the website. You might then grab out your Dansko shoes and notice it on the shoebox or on the label. You might then end up calling your architect and find out that they're also a certified B Corporation, and it's on the front door as you walk in to talk about your new building. All of those different vehicles are ways that we spread the word, and I think there's some momentum. We're starting to reach a tipping point where people have started to hear about this growing community of certified B corporations. We were recently recognized by President Clinton at the Clinton Global Initiative. It's starting. I think if we look at the last 5 years, people joined us as an active leadership for the first 5 years, where they were adding their brand to ours. I think right about now we're starting to hit that tipping point where the brand, the Certified B Corporation brand, is actually adding real value to the community.
That's really satisfying.
It's been exciting.
Thank you
I got to
for
tell you,
walking
it's been
me through
exciting.
that. So I want to make sure that I pipe down a little bit and give Mike a chance to share questions from those who have joined us today. Mike, do you have some comments or questions from our friends?
Yes, we do actually. The first one comes from Dennis. He asks if a B Corp can also be an ESOP company, which, for those not familiar with the acronym ESOP, is an employee stock ownership plan. Um, so if you could address his question, please.
Sure. Thank you, Dennis, for the question. And the answer is absolutely yes. We actually have about a dozen ESOPs that are part of the community, including a great one in the green building industry called South Mountain. We also have Dansko Footwear is an ESOP, King Arthur Flour is an ESOP. There are, as I said, about a dozen who are indeed ESOPs and certified B corporations. King Arthur is actually the first to be an ESOP, a certified B corporation, and a benefit corporation. So you can absolutely incorporate as a benefit corporation. You can be a certified B corporation as an ESOP. There's actually a great new ad, or actually it's not an ad, it's an article in the SRR journal that just came out that's really targeting employee-owned organizations. It's the cover story on Be a Better ESOP, and the B is obviously the B in the circle.
Okay. And we had a question from Matthew. It was, you mentioned earlier that 12 states have recognized this type of corporate structure. Are you seeing a geographic concentration of that kind of adoption, or is
hmm
it just kind of widespread throughout the country?
No, it's been a completely diverse in terms of geography. We have Illinois, we have South Carolina and Louisiana, we have Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Virginia. We have California. What probably is even more rewarding, Matthew, is that this is not a partisan effort. Bobby Jindal in Louisiana signed this. Vicki Haley signed this. Christie in New Jersey signed this, as well as, deep blue states, whether it be Vermont or California. And the reason why this is legislation that everybody can get behind is that A, it doesn't increase regulation. B, it doesn't increase budget. C, it's totally opt-in. And D, it's an idea that's easy to stand for, right? For the right, this is an opportunity to use private enterprise to solve public problems. It's putting in the hands of business, scalable, efficient organizations, the opportunity to address social and environmental problems. So the right loves this. This is about potentially shrinking government for the right. On the left, we have people also carrying this flag because it brings more attention and resources to in our environmental situation and our social situation. So it is truly a bipartisan idea, and often when we enter a state, we end up with the farthest right and the farthest left senators as co-sponsors on the bill. And to that end, we actually passed Pennsylvania as an example unanimously. We passed out of the Senate 49-0. We passed out of the House 198-0. And I think that is now the 7th state that has passed without a single vote in opposition. Not one. Not New Jersey, not in New York, not in Maryland, not a single vote in opposition. That's been really, really rewarding.
That is fantastic. Wow. The next question comes from Sarah. It's actually a multifaceted question, so if I need to repeat part of it later, I certainly will do so. But she wants to know if B Corps really can affect or change the landscape of business through social and environmental change. She's wondering how much impact can they have both today and into the future? And also a strategic question, um, do you feel it's going to be better to convince large companies like you referenced earlier, Ben and Jerry and Patagonia, that control huge budgets to become a B Corp, or should the focus be on newer, smaller, more nimble companies?
Boy, great questions. Thank you, Sarah. So uh, obviously I'm biased, right? I have devoted my entire second professional career to this mission. And the truth is, if I thought there was a better way for myself and the other 30 folks in this organization to have an impact, we'd pursue it. So I absolutely believe that this will have a profound impact on capitalism. And let me tell you you why the theory of change for our organization. It's kind of a silly term, but people use it a lot in the nonprofit world, the theory of change. How do you expect really to have a lasting impact? And our belief is that by highlighting the gold standard, by creating a clear vision for the public about what these companies are doing and how they're excelling at both making money and making a difference, you're going to move all business. And the reason why you're going to move all business is that consumers care about this. Investors care about this. The government cares about this. And I tell you, the people who care about this most and where this is going to show up first is employees care about this. I am so privileged to be able to speak on business school campuses across the country. I speak at Harvard and at Stanford and at Kellogg and at Wharton, all across the country about this idea. And I can tell you that the generation of leaders who are leaving universities today are absolutely hungry for this idea, the idea that they can bring their whole selves to work, the idea that they don't need to check their values at the door when they show up at their cubicle, the idea that they can make money and make a difference at the same time at their work. And though my guess is we began this conversation and the people who are going to listen hereafter, the brand recognition of B Corporation is going to be 20 to 50%, depending upon this community. But if you actually go on campuses, our brand recognition is over 90%. And it's over 90% is because they're looking for this as a solution. And therefore, if you want to be a competitive business long time, if you want to attract and retain talent, you're going to need to move in this direction. And so our hope is by creating a market, right, where there are investors, consumers, and talent being drawn to these businesses, it will move the rest of the market in this direction. And the best evidence I have is where I began our conversation an hour ago, right, that there are 650 certified B corporations, but 8,000 companies have registered to use the assessment for free because they heard about it from somebody. Somebody said, you guys should think about being a B corporation. They got online, they spent an hour and a half, went through the assessment to begin the journey of moving in this direction. So that is our theory of change, the belief that by shining a light on the gold standard and giving them the tools to scale and raise capital and have that liquidity event, we're creating a market that's going to move all business to a more sustainable future. Now, with regards to your second half of the question, small or big company, the answer is both, right? The answer is we need both. Often you see innovation, and I'm sure Ron and your organization sees all this all the time. The innovators are often the smaller businesses, the small and medium organizations that are more nimble, more able to pivot in this marketplace. And therefore, we need those innovators as part of our community. But we also need large companies so that you nod when you open up our list of 650 and you say, oh, I get it. I know who Patagonia is. I know who Cabot Creamery is. I know who King Arthur Flour is. I know who Method Home Products is, who Seventh Generation is. I know what those types of organizations look like. I quickly understand who this community is and what's it about. So we absolutely need both. And a finer point on that, we do, however, make a trade-off. And the trade-off is because we require the rewriting of your corporate governing documents, this is darn near impossible to do if you're already a public company. The only way you can do this if you want to be public is to do it before your IPO, because once you've had your initial public offering, the cat's a little bit out of the bag. And to try to rewrite your corporate governing documents or become a benefit corporation at that juncture will be quite difficult. But I'd be willing to bet that in the next year, there'll be at least one, if not several, certified B corporations or benefit corporations that go public.
Okay. And that actually clears up a question that was presented about approaching any Wall Street firms with this concept. Obviously, they're already on Wall Street; they've already gone public, so it'd be, like you said, a much more difficult thing to do. Um, We had, it was kind of a more of a comment from, I believe it's pronounced Joya. Um, she just wanted to share that this concept is revolutionary. Even though I don't have business training, I've always wondered why more corporations don't make money while making a difference. Um, she says, glad the trend is starting and keep up the good work. So
Thank you.
wanted to
Thank you,
pass
Joy.
that along to you. And I actually had a question. It goes back to the B impact rating system. We were talking about, 80 out of 100 and some of the knee-jerk reactions that people have to that percentage. But given the breadth of industries and their focus, do you think it's fair to say that 200 out of 200 is really not even possible?
I, I do think a perfect score is impossible.
Okay.
I can't imagine somebody ending up with it is not technically impossible, uh, but I don't think we'll see the day when somebody gets a 200-point score. It's too challenging. But I do want to provide one point of clarification. I appreciate the question, which is that the assessment does vary depending upon your industry. As you can imagine, Mike, we don't want to ask the same questions of a 5-person company or a 5,000-person company.
Right.
What's a gold standard for a 5-person company is quite different than a gold standard for a 5,000-person company. And also to that end, we weight the sections differently. Well, how we weight the environmental section for a law firm is quite different than how we weight it for a chemical company. And as a result, the objective is to measure the gold standard performance in all of the impact areas, no matter how big or how small or what industry you're in. But what we actually ask and how we weight each individual question depends upon where you fall along 3 variables: size, industry, and location. We even have some variants, as you can imagine, about what we ask somebody who's a social business in Tanzania versus a retailer in San Francisco.
Okay. We also got a question from Joan. She wants to know, um, in regards to your uh, certification here, how would you compare yourself to the Dow Jones Sustainability Index standards?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are a variety of ESG measurement organizations for public companies. ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance, including DJSI, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. There's an effort by Bloomberg carrying ESG metrics on their terminals. There's an effort by Thomson Reuters through an organization called Asset4. There's an organization called MSCI that has a whole section around ESG metrics, and there's some really important core differences. The first is that, and we talked a little bit about this, that most of those metrics are being measured to try to evaluate the risk that environmental, social, and governance issues have to the financial performance of a company. It's really about risk mitigation. I want to make sure that there isn't a huge exposure to an environmental sanction or that there's a huge exposure to a human rights issue. And therefore, there are these tools that are used to try to make sure that ESG performance is correlated with financial risk mitigation, and your public investment is going to continue to improve over time because they did well on ESG standards. The second thing about those metrics is, as a result, more often than not, they're looking around compliance issues. They're looking around sanctions. They're looking around industry practices. And it's about an approach that's focused on doing no harm. That I want to make sure that my company is making me money, my investment's making me money, and it's also doing no harm. It really isn't trying to move the needle into the positive territory. That includes all of those ones I mentioned: Asset4, DGSI, MSCI, the Bloomberg Initiative. All of them are about really using screens to make sure you're doing no harm, whereas our assessment is specifically focused on positive impact, moving the needle into the positive territory. And the last piece that's really quite important is that the way that those organizations get their information is they essentially you have a fleet of analysts who go out and collect publicly available information on those companies, and then they put it together in a report to tell you about their ESG performance and the risk mitigation. Our approach to collecting the information is the exact opposite. We actually have you do a self-assessment, and then we validate it using both a required documentation piece where you have to attach documents that validates your answers, and also a on-site review where we'll actually show up on the doorsteps of 20% of our companies every certification period to make sure that there wasn't any, shall we say, aspirational answering going on as they went through the self-assessment. So it's about a self-assessment that's validated versus a fleet of folks going out and mining databases to pull in information to come up with this ESG risk mitigation evaluation.
Well, Mike, this is Ron. At this point, I would really like to extend tremendous thanks to Bart. This is really an enlightening webinar for the Impact Series, and one of the most enjoyable that we've done. I would like to assert that I think what we're seeing is a change in mindset that takes us to a point where we no longer believe that sustainability requires sacrifice. And I think what I've really seen here is that that you're helping to redefine success, and that's why people are attracted in a very meaningful way to these efforts. And so I want to congratulate you, and I want to thank you, Bart, for the time that you spent with us, and to wish you ongoing success without limit.
I appreciate that, Ron, and I appreciate the opportunity to address your audience. It's been really a delightful time for me. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and I do want to express my profound gratitude for you guys helping to let us tell our story.
Absolutely. We will look forward to another opportunity at some point in the future, and if we can be a resource to you, please don't hesitate.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate your help today.
And thanks to all the folks who joined us today, too.
That's right. I wanted to take one more opportunity to thank our sponsors, which are BASF, Bio-Based Insulation, DuPont, Green Builder Coalition, and Uponor. And I also wanted to thank all of you for joining us today. Finally, thank you, Bart, for taking the time to share your insights with us. We very much appreciate it.
And my pleasure, Mike, and thanks everybody for attending today. I appreciate it.
We hope you'll join us next time for another edition of Impact Series, Game Changers in Sustainability. Take care and have a great day.